Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're here today on our Training Thursday episode of the week. It is a bit of a nutrition-based show, talking about intermittent fasting, talking about which meal should be the largest or should you skip a meal at all during the day. These are all popular topics, especially this past year, where a lot of people have really been getting deep into intermittent fasting and really doing a lot more 16-8 based fasting, which is typically 16 hours of fasting and then 8-hour window for eating. But oftentimes how it's done is people typically skip breakfast and then they wait until lunch to begin their feasting, as they say, having lunch around, let's say, noon, and then eating until about 8 o'clock or so at night. Some people shrink that window, some people expand it. It really depends on the individual and what program they seem to be following at the time. Now, I've shared many times on my intermittent fasting podcast what I believe the absolute pinnacle is for intermittent fasting. I've gone through what happens in the body as you move through 12 hours of intermittent fasting, which is the minimum, to 14 to 16 to basically 18. Then what happens at 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, and 72 hours. If you don't know what actually goes on in terms of the physiology of the body as you start to deplete glycogen, when you start to get into deeper levels of autophagy, which is so healing for the body, at that point you begin to break down cancer cells, cellular cleanup, detoxification, and so much more. Now, that takes into consideration, though, that you actually have all of the nutrients that your body needs in order to complete the detox process. Phase 1 nutrients, a lot of vitamins and minerals needed, some antioxidants, and then phase 2, where we need lots of antioxidants to help that intermediary process, as well as sulfur-based amino acids that come from foods like cruciferous vegetables or specific extracts such as your taurine, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, etc. So although we're not going to go deep on that today, I can share with you, though, those podcasts at episode 2512. StephenCabral.com/2512, because right now we're going to get into the research of the day, which is, should you skip breakfast or dinner? Now, again, I love being able to read the research. I love being able to share that with you. And it's not necessarily about skipping one of these meals, but it's like, okay, if you do, which one would be better? And if you don't, which one should be smaller than the other? And I come into this with a knowledge based, at least from having done this in practice since like 1996, like many years ago. I've been doing this in terms of helping clients with body transformation. Now, I was very young at the time, teenager, 96, but I was still a certified personal trainer and certified nutritionist helping clients with body transformation. And I did that for many years. Then went on, of course, got my doctoral degree, but more importantly than that, getting a doctoral degree in naturopathy, I was actually doing internships overseas, studying Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, functional medicine, which is basically bioregulatory medicine in Europe, and so much more. And the reason I did that, as I've said many times, is because I'm the biggest skeptic, right? It took me 10 years to get well. I saw all the best conventional medicine specialists in Boston, Massachusetts, obviously some of the best hospitals in the world there, but I also saw lots of natural health practitioners and didn't get well through any of them. And then some started to help me tremendously. And then I met my mentor, of course, and then I was able to put it all together. Now, I just want to say, too, in all fairness, when I met my mentor, and sometimes I don't give enough credit, I had already been studying this for 9.5 years, right? Like I had studied what didn't work for the first couple of years for conventional medicine, and then what seemed to work a little bit with natural health-based modalities. Then I started getting into at-home lab testing. Okay, that was definitely helping, but then she put it all together. And so that's simply like why I do the podcast every day. It's because there's a lot of unhealthy people. There's a lot of sick people out there. There's a lot of people looking to get well, lose weight, gain weight, or live longer. And they've been given either partial information or bad information, which is what I was given, and I simply feel that I need to pay it forward. I found out my answers. I want to share those with others. So when I look at even research studies, and so the whole reason for that tangent for the last 2 minutes was because I want to share with you that, yes, I read the research on PubMed, National Library of Medicine, all Google Scholar, all of these different things. But what I want to do is I don't want to say, okay, we're just going to take every research study at face value, because we know oftentimes there can be issues with that. But I look through it, okay, this is the state-of-the-art research, modern medicine based, then I'll view it through other lenses and I'll say, does this make sense? And I think this research study makes sense. So I'm going to give you the Ayurvedic perspective at the end, but let's get right into it now. So the study's called Twice as High Diet-Induced Thermogenesis After Breakfast versus Dinner on High Calorie as well as Low Calorie Meals. Okay, so here we go. What does all of that mean? So there were 6 authors of this study, or essentially who put the study together. It was published, just about a year and a half ago in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Again, I'm going to link it up at 2512 along with the actual takeaways right now. Okay, so there was the thesis or the question for this study, the hypothesis, the question of whether there is a daytime variation in diet-induced thermogenesis, which has just not been answered until this study was done. Moreover, it is unclear whether a potential diurnal variation in diet-induced thermogenesis is preserved during hypocaloric nutrition. Okay, let me translate that for, everyday language, okay? So what it means is this: diet-induced thermogenesis. So the foods you eat, they can burn and will burn a certain number of calories when you put them in your body. Now, regular thermogenesis, again, this is an approximation. For every 100 calories of fat, you'll burn off 6 calories of that through just the digestion, the thermogenesis of breaking down that food. Same for carbohydrates, about 6 calories or so. Now, when you eat protein, the amazing thing is it's about 30 calories out of that 100 just gets dissipated by the actual energy needed in order to break down that food. Because after all, digestion is one of the largest metabolic processes of the body. It's often estimated that about 30% of all of your energy for the day goes to digestion. Sometimes, then, as practitioners, we have to think about if someone is already low energy and we put a heavy, hard-to-digest meal into their stomach, do you think they'll have more energy or less energy after that meal? Oftentimes less, right? So we kind of have to think about the strength of digestion as a big part of the healing process, especially for those people with low energy. Okay, so the objective is, and again, this is quoting the research, we hypothesized that diet-induced thermogenesis varies depending on the time of the day and explored whether this physiological regulation is preserved after low calorie compared with high calorie intake. So now they're asking, okay, they believe that there might be a specific time of the day where people will burn more calories after a meal, metabolism will be elevated, but they don't know if that's the fact if both of the meals are low calorie as well. All right, so under blinded conditions, 16 normal weight men twice underwent a 3-day in-laboratory randomized crossover study. Volunteers consumed a predetermined low-calorie breakfast, 11% of their individual daily calorie requirement, and a high-calorie dinner, 69% in one condition and vice versa in the other. Okay, if we do the math on that, it's 80% of all of their calories for the day were breakfast and dinner. We can do the math for the rest of it, went towards another meal, snack, lunch, etc. Okay, so when we look at this, they did one group where the breakfast was only 11% of their total calories and the dinner was 69%. Okay, so if you want to just round it off in your head, think 10% of the calories at breakfast, 70% at dinner. Okay, then in another time they brought them to the lab, same people, they did 70% essentially at breakfast and 10% at dinner. All right, here were the results. And again, I know it's only 16 people, so I'm going to actually talk about that towards the end because again, we have to take that into account. And it was also normal weight men, which we have to take that into account because of hormones and all sorts of different things. But again, let's get into the results because they do mean something. Identical calorie consumption led to a 2.5 times higher diet-induced thermogenesis increase in the morning, meaning breakfast, than in the evening after high-calorie and low-calorie meals. The food-induced increase of blood glucose and insulin concentrations was diminished after breakfast compared with dinner. Low-calorie breakfast, increased feelings of hunger. So not enough calories at breakfast, increased feelings of hunger, specifically appetite for sweets in the course of the day. Their conclusions were diet-induced thermogenesis is clearly higher in the morning than in the evening, irrespective of the consumed calorie amount. That is, this physiological rhythmicity, that's a nice word, is preserved during hypocaloric nutrition. Extensive break fasting should therefore be preferred over large dinner meals to prevent obesity and high blood glucose peaks, even under conditions of hypocaloric diet. So, all right, that is it. And why don't I do this? Well, let's break it down into exactly what this meant, just from a high-level view. So basically, they said, if you have a larger breakfast and you have a smaller dinner, and everything else is equal in terms of calories, whether it's lower calorie or high calorie, you're actually going to have better glucose levels, better blood sugar levels, potential better type 2 diabetes or blood pressure-based issues on this type of a diet. So I thought this was fairly interesting. And the reason is that I can tell you from what we have to say is anecdotal. But again, I like to share with people, like, I don't believe that what we do is anecdotal. So yes, I know that there's a specific study with these 16 people and it's in specific conditions. So I get that. But you have to understand is that I started practice full-time in 2000. We've done well over 250,000 appointments. So this is 16 people. We've met with hundreds of thousands. And so while I don't publish my research, I share it with you on the podcast, I do that because that is not in any way, shape, or form an interest of mine. I can get you immediately what is working based on hundreds of thousands of other people and over 20 years in practice. And I want to share that with you. Then, yes, I would love researchers who do this in a lab to actually put that to the test. Well, again, I was doing this now, and did I make this up? No, I learned this, right? So I learned this and I refine it in my own way and with my own protocols and programs. And this is what we see work. You know, for people with all sorts of sleep issues, skin issues, autoimmune issues, blood pressure, blood sugar, et cetera, we always, to the very best of our ability, yeah, we'll do intermittent fasting, but we don't skip breakfast. We don't. If possible, and it works into the person's lifestyle, we try to shrink the dinner meal, always. Now, again, like, how do you learn this? So the thing is this, some of it is just, you know, N equals 1 experimentations, right? But that's fine, but it's just you, and you could have imbalances. But I've talked about this many times on my sleep podcast. When I go through sleep topics, almost nothing will improve your heart rate variability, meaning like it shows reduced stress and better rejuvenation overnight. Nothing will increase your heart rate variability more than stopping eating 3-4 hours or more before bed. My best HRVs, hands down, are when I skip dinner. Like, hands down. So if I have a late lunch because I'm out with friends or it's a holiday meal or whatever it might be, and we're just like commuting or whatever, I'll skip dinner. If it's an informal dinner where I'm not sitting down with my family, or if I'm doing my functional medicine detox on day 1 and day 2, my heart rate variability will be 10, 15, 20 points higher than it normally is. It's incredible. Why? There is no energy being used if your dinner is small or skipped. Now, again, this podcast is not about skipping dinner. It's about understanding how the human body physiology and energy demands are met. And if you put a large meal into your body at the end of the day, because a lot of people are doing 1 meal a day, and they wait until 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock, whatever it might be, and they have an enormous meal, big steak and, you know, whatever they want, and they gorge. They really just, you know, eat a couple thousand calories, and they're like, yeah, but I'm leaner. I get it, I understand, but track your sleep, track your rejuvenation, and also, like, are you 45 years old or 25 years old? Because you can get away with a lot in your 20s. That's what I've learned. Now, I wasn't necessarily healthy in my 20s, but I see what happens, right? Because I have the ability to oversee a large practice. So what I'd share with you is this. When I look back in Ayurvedic medicine, in Ayurveda, even all the clinics I was at, it was a easy to digest breakfast. And I have lots of podcasts on like the best breakfast you could have, liquid before lunch, like all these different types of things. And it's a philosophy. It doesn't mean that you need to exactly follow it, but I'm telling you right now, it's a philosophy that does play out in the real world. So in Ayurveda, they did not have a small breakfast. They had a normal sized breakfast, but it was easy to digest. Okay, that's it. I'll let you, we can go back and listen to other podcasts on that. Lunch was the largest meal of the day, strongest digestion, dictated by what they call the pitta time of the day. And then at night, from that 2 to 6 hour, or it's more like kapha predominant, they would say you do not want to eat more food during these more sluggish spaced hours. And so they would say it was a small dinner. If you think about it back in the day, it was more of a soup. Again, easy to digest, not a lot of calories. And this goes against more of our Western-based mentality. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this at all, because I have a normal-sized dinner. So I'm not going to say in any way, shape, or form that I follow this to the T. But what I do is I make sure that I finish my dinner before 6 p.m. Okay, and that's like 28 out of 30 nights. So again, I'm not perfect. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, because I'll be out a couple nights and it might finish at 7:30, 8. So very rarely do I eat after that. Very rarely. And so if I finish by 6 and I go to bed at 10, 9:30, 10, I can get the sleep and rejuvenation that I want, because I've had 3 hours to get that food digesting and moving out of my stomach. So again, this is exactly what Ayurveda teaches. This is what we've known in private practice for a long time, and it's playing out. And so what I would say to you is just be careful as to what the diet of the day, the diet du jour is sharing with us, okay? Because I don't necessarily believe it's as healthy, even if it helps you transform your body to a degree, okay? Because again, we can look at total calories for the day. The last piece is this, because again, I always want to stay unbiased with you, and that's my promise to you. This study it's not refuted, but there was a letter to the editor. And the letter to the editor was by someone that I've read a couple of their studies. There are a few studies out there, like a half a dozen. Edward Melanson, and I'm sure this is a doctor or PhD. I apologize that I don't know their specific credentials. And they did not refute the study. But what they were saying is that more research needs to be done, which I don't disagree with at all. But again, this works with normal physiology. I'm going to get to that. I'll end with that in just a moment. But that the resting energy expenditure, that the actual thermogenesis may not have been as high, might not be twice as high. Because again, it's saying that it's twice as high of your thermogenesis, your metabolism in the morning than at night. And so there's just some refuting to that. Again, it's a 16-person study, but what I can tell you is this. Again, it matches up perfectly. So you've just been fasting for the last 12 hours or so. Let's just say you stopped eating at 7 p.m. and you're now having breakfast at 7, 8 o'clock or so in the morning. Okay, so your body, as I've talked about over the last few weeks, and you can go to stephencabral.com/podcast for previous podcasts, and I do hope that you're tuning in daily. I try to keep the shows short and just give you a little bit of research, knowledge, et cetera, all based on natural health or each day. And so what I want to share with you is this, is that you're more glycogen depleted first thing in the morning. And so the study showed that these people, and again, I think that this can be replicated, had more of a craving for sweets if they didn't get enough calories in food and maybe even carbohydrates in the morning. So why? Because the body knows, like, listen, our liver glycogen levels are depleted 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 100%. Who knows? Like, again, it depends on the individual. I've shared that before. And your body knows that it's supposed to restock its glycogen, because glucose, does keep you alive, contrary to popular belief from a lot of 100% all-in keto people. But even, again, if you're 100% all-in keto, you have to understand is that your body has to have glucose in it. Like, you can't not have glucose, right? So it knows that it needs that. And that's why when I'm talking with you, I'm always trying to preach from human physiology at a foundational based level. There's no reason to eliminate all of your carbs. There's no reason to be 90% fat in your diet. There's just not. There's no reason to do that. You can lose weight, get well, get healthy, live long, by actually having a more balanced approach with your nutrition. And if you have difficulty digesting certain things like carbohydrates, you really want to look at overall gut-based function. So we're going to keep it at that for today. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm going to link up the study. You can decide for yourself. You can leave in the comments whether you believe this, whether you don't believe it. If you're a practitioner, have you seen this play out in practice? All I can share with you is that I absolutely have. The people who go lighter at dinner, a little heavier at lunch, or maybe even for breakfast, end up getting better results in terms of overall glucose, sleep, rejuvenation, wellness, skin conditions, and so much more. So thank you so much for tuning into the show. As always, if this was helpful, do feel free to share it with anyone you believe it could serve. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.